The cold metal floor of the Galactic Council chamber vibrated under Commander Lee Jinho's boots as he walked toward the central platform. Around him, hundreds of alien species sat in their designated sections, their strange forms creating shadows under the bright artificial lights. Some had multiple eyes, others had no eyes at all. Some breathed oxygen like humans, while others existed in special atmospheric bubbles. Today's discussion was about the Kithrans, and Lee Jinho already knew how it would end. The massive holographic display showed images of Cathara Prime, a world that had once been beautiful. Now the cities lay in ruins. Empty buildings stretched toward gray skies, and the streets that once bustled with life were silent. The few Kithrans still alive moved slowly through their dying world, helping each other walk, because their bodies were too weak to stand alone. The genetic plague has been killing them for 300 years, announced Counselor Vexty. His crystal body reflected the light as he spoke, making rainbow patterns on the walls. Only 2 million of them are left. They cannot reproduce properly anymore. They cannot build or create. They are finished as a species. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Althorian delegates clicked their sharp mandibles, and what humans had learned was their version of nodding. The massive cetacean representatives made low sounds that the translation computers converted to phrases like waste of time and natural selection. We must be practical, continued Counselor Vexty. The Kithrans take up valuable space in this sector. Their star system has rich mining opportunities. We should quarantine their world and wait for nature to finish its work. Then we can make better use of their resources. More sounds of approval echoed through the chamber. Lee Jin felt sick to his stomach. High Arbiter Kel Shane, the ancient leader of the council, raised one of his forearms. The chamber fell silent. Does any species wish to speak for the Kithrans? Silence stretched for long seconds. Lee Jinho knew that many species in the chamber had the technology and resources to help the dying Kithrans. They simply chose not to. To them, helping a weak species was throwing away valuable resources. Finally, Lee Jinho stood up. His simple blue and white Earth uniform looked plain, compared to the elaborate clothing and natural armor of the other delegates. Commander Lee Jinho of United Earth requests permission to speak, he said clearly. A wave of surprised sounds filled the chamber. Several species began what sounded like laughter, though the translation computers struggled to convey the mockery in their various forms of communication. Humans, said Counselor Vexty, his crystal form shimmering with what might have been amusement, always trying to save everyone. What do you propose, Commander? Will you waste your species' limited resources on beings who are already dead? Lee Jinho stepped forward. Earth formally requests permission to establish humanitarian missions to Cathara Prime. We want to study their condition and provide medical assistance. The laughter grew louder. High Arbiter Kel Shane had to wave his arm several times to restore order. Commander, said the High Arbiter, your species is still young in galactic terms. You have been part of this council for only 50 years. Perhaps you do not understand how the galaxy works. Some species thrive, others fail. This is the natural order. With respect, High Arbiter, Lee Jinho replied. Humans believe that no intelligent species should be abandoned while there is still hope. Hope? Counselor Vexty's crystal body flashed bright red. Commander, the Kithrans are genetic failures. Their plague is not a disease we can cure. It is built into their very DNA. They are weak, they are dying, and helping them is like trying to stop a sun from burning out. 3 months later, Captain Kim Minho sat in the pilot's seat of the transport ship Seoul as it entered the Kithara system. The journey from Earth had taken weeks, even with their fastest engines. Behind him, the cargo holds were filled with medical supplies, food, construction, equipment, and most importantly, hope. Captain, called Navigator Choi Subin from her station, I'm getting readings from the planet's surface. The power grid is failing in multiple sectors. Their atmospheric processors are barely working. Dr. Park Hygiene looked up from her medical scanners. The bio readings are terrible. The plague affects their nervous systems, their immune systems, even their ability to process nutrients properly. I've never seen anything like this. As they descended through the gray atmosphere of Cathara Prime, the crew of the Soul got their first real look at the Catharans. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent. Their large eyes held an ancient sadness, and many of them moved with the careful slowness of people in constant pain. Elder Namara met them at the landing pad, supported by two younger Kitharans who looked barely strong enough to walk themselves. Through the translation device, her voice carried the weight of centuries of defeat. "Humans," she said, "we received your message, but we do not understand. Why have you come to our dying world? Even we know that we cannot be saved." Captain Kim stepped forward and gently took the elder's fragile hand in his. "Because every life has value," he said simply. "Because no one should face the end alone. Because giving up is not what humans do." Elder Nimura's large eyes filled with tears. It had been so long since anyone had shown her people kindness. 2 years had passed since the first human ships landed on Cathara Prime, and the changes were remarkable. Dr. Park Hygen stepped out of her underground research laboratory, blinking in the afternoon sunlight that now filtered through cleaner air. The atmospheric processors were working again, thanks to the joint efforts of human engineers and the few Kitharans still healthy enough to help. The sound of construction filled the air. Human machines worked alongside Kitharan tools to rebuild the crumbling infrastructure. Chief Engineer Yoon Dae-yoon shouted instructions to his mixed crew of humans and Kitharans as they installed a new water purification system in the city center. "Careful with that power coupling," Yoon called out to a young Kitharan named Velaneth. "It needs to connect smoothly, or the whole system will fail." Velaneth nodded and worked with steady hands. 6 months ago, the plague had made his hands shake so badly he could barely hold eating utensils. Now, with proper nutrition and medical care from the humans, he was learning to be an engineer. Dr. Park walked toward the medical center, where her colleague, Dr. Song Min-seok, was examining tissue samples under a quantum microscope. The mystery of the Kitharan plague was slowly revealing itself, and what they were finding made both doctors angry. "Hyjin, look at this," Song said as she entered. He pointed to the holographic display showing genetic sequences. "These DNA patterns don't match any natural disease evolution. Someone did this to them on purpose." Dr. Park studied the data carefully. The genetic markers are too precise, too targeted. This plague was designed to attack specific functions in Kitharan biology. But who would do such a thing, and why? Song added grimly. Meanwhile, in the restored learning center across the city, teacher Lee Soman worked patiently with a group of young Kitharans. The plague affected their minds as well as their bodies, making it hard for them to concentrate or remember things. But Lee Soman had seen improvements that gave her hope. "Try again, Lithera," she said gently to a 10-year-old Kitharan girl. "Take your time with the math problem." Lithera stared at the numbers on her tablet, her large eyes filled with frustration. For months, even simple addition had been beyond her plague-damaged mind. But today something was different. 7 + 5 = 12, she whispered, then looked up in amazement. "I can think clearly. The fog in my head is going away." Lee Soman smiled and patted the girl's shoulder. "Your mind is healing, just like your body." The humans were right to have hope. Back on Earth, the situation was less encouraging. Ambassador Won Ji-hoon stood before the United Nations Assembly, defending the Kithara mission against growing criticism. "The cost of this operation has reached 20 billion credits," announced Secretary General Martinez. "Meanwhile, we have infrastructure problems here on Earth that need funding. Some people are asking why we're spending so much money on aliens who might not even survive." Won Ji-young straightened his shoulders. Because it's the right thing to do. Because if we can save the Kithrans, we might learn something that helps other species in the future. Because compassion isn't supposed to have a price tag. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, the mission received continued funding. Earth's government, despite the complaints, still believed in helping others. In the Galactic Council chambers, the reaction was much harsher. Counselor Vexti presented images of the human activities on Kythera Prime to the assembled delegates. The humans have now spent 27 billion credits on this foolish project, he announced. They have sent 12 ships, 300 personnel, and countless tons of supplies to help a species that cannot be helped. When will they learn that some races are simply meant to disappear? The Althorian delegate clicked his mandibles in agreement. Humans waste resources like children waste toys. They do not understand that the galaxy rewards strength, not weakness. High Arbiter, Kalshane studied the images thoughtfully. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should be grateful that humans are willing to make such sacrifices. It means more resources for the rest of us when their mission inevitably fails. Back on Kythera Prime, Elder Namara walked through the restored gardens with Captain Kim Minho, who had chosen to remain on-world to coordinate the ongoing operations. The gardens had been dead for decades, but human botanists and Kythran plant specialists had worked together to bring them back to life. Children's laughter echoed through the air as young humans and Kythrans played together. The human children had arrived with their families as more permanent settlements were established. They ran and played games while their Kythran friends watched in wonder, many of them experiencing joy for the first time in their lives. Why do you do this? Elder Nimra asked Captain Kim as they watched the children play. Your people could have used these resources for yourselves. You could have ignored us like everyone else did. Captain Kim smiled, watching engineer Jung Seo-yoon teach a group of teenage Kythorans how to repair atmospheric processors. Because everyone deserves a chance to live. Because helping others is what makes us human. Because when we lift others up, we all rise together. Elder Nimara felt tears in her eyes. For the first time in 3 centuries, her people had hope for the future, and it was all because one species had refused to look away when others needed help. Dr. Park Hygen's hands trembled as she stared at the test results on her computer screen. After 3 long years of research, working day and night with her team, they had finally solved the mystery of the Kythran plague. But what they discovered made her feel both excited and angry at the same time. Song, you need to see this immediately, she called to her research partner across the laboratory. Dr. Song Minseok hurried over, wiping his hands on a lab towel. He had been working with tissue samples all morning, trying to understand why some treatments worked better than others. What is it? He asked, looking at the complex genetic patterns displayed on the screen. It's not a natural disease, Dr. Park said, her voice tight with emotion. Someone created this plague on purpose. Look at these genetic sequences. They're too perfect, too precise. This was designed to attack the Kytherans specifically. Song studied the data carefully. The evidence was clear once you knew what to look for. But who would do such a horrible thing? And why? I don't know who, Dr. Park replied, but I think I know why. Look at these dormant genetic sections. The plague isn't just killing the Kytherans. It's hiding something. These DNA sequences aren't damaged. They're locked away, like someone put chains around them. 3 weeks later, they were ready for their first experimental treatment. Now 13 years old, and one of their most promising patients, had volunteered to test the new gene therapy. She was no longer the confused, sick child she had been when the humans first arrived. Under human care, her mind had cleared considerably, and she was eager to help her people. Are you ready, Lithera? Dr. Park asked gently, as the young Kythera lay on the medical table. Yes, Dr. Park, Lithera replied with a brave smile. If this can help my people, I want to try it. The treatment took only an hour. but the results were immediate and stunning. As the modified genetic material began working in Lithera's system, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Park called technician Wang Ju from across the room, his voice filled with excitement and confusion. "You need to see this right now." Dr. Park hurried over to where Wang was monitoring Lithera's recovery. What she saw made her stop in amazement. A small metal sphere that had been sitting on the table next to Lithera was now floating in the air above her hand. It wasn't just floating, it was changing shape, stretching and bending in ways that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Lithera's eyes were glowing with a soft blue light. She looked at her hand in wonder, watching the metal sphere dance through the air under her control. "I can see things," she whispered in amazement. "I can see the tiny spaces between atoms. I can touch the invisible forces that hold everything together. It's like the whole universe is made of music, and I can hear every note." Dr. Song came running when he heard the commotion. He stopped dead when he saw the floating metal sphere. "That's impossible," he said. "Matter doesn't behave like that unless you can manipulate quantum fields," Dr. Park said quietly, understanding beginning to dawn on her. The plague wasn't just suppressing their immune systems. It was suppressing abilities that no other known species possesses. Over the following weeks, as more young Kithrans received the gene therapy treatment, the true scope of their hidden abilities became clear. They could manipulate matter at the atomic level, bend space around objects, and perceive dimensions that others couldn't even imagine. Quantor, a young Kithran who had been among the first to receive treatment, demonstrated his abilities to a group of amazed human scientists. He made a piece of metal flow like water, then solidified it into a complex geometric shape that couldn't exist in normal three-dimensional space. "We always wondered why other species called us failures," he said, his eyes still glowing with quantum energy. "Now I understand. They were afraid of what we could become." Captain Kim immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth and the human colonies. "The Kithrans aren't a dying species," he wrote. "They're the most advanced, natural quantum consciousness we've ever encountered. What the galaxy saw as weakness was actually suppressed evolution." News of the breakthrough spread quickly through human space, but it was kept secret from the Galactic Council. The humans knew that if other species learned about Kithran abilities, they would no longer see them as worthless outcasts to be ignored. Elder Nimara, now healthy and restored to her people's natural grace and beauty, stood with Dr. Park on the observation deck of the medical center. Below them, young Kithrans practiced their newfound abilities, while human children watched in fascination. "You gave us back more than our lives," Nimara said softly. "You gave us back our true selves." Dr. Park smiled, but her expression was troubled. "I'm worried about what happens when the galaxy learns what you can do. Not everyone will be happy. That the species they wanted to abandon is actually more advanced than they are." Nimara's expression grew serious. "Then we must be ready. My people remember who stood by us when we were dying. We will not forget our friends, just as we will not forget those who would have watched us disappear." Unknown to them, long-range scanners from the Zalani Empire had already detected unusual energy readings from Kitharal Prime. The galaxy's most aggressive military power was beginning to take interest in the world they had once dismissed as worthless. Admiral Beek Minjae stood on the command bridge of the UESS Harmony, staring at the tactical display with growing concern. 47 heavy cruisers and 3 massive dreadnoughts had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Cathara system. The Zalani Empire had brought their largest war fleet in decades. Communications from the Zalani flagship, Admiral reported Officer Nau Jung from her station. The holographic image of Warlord Dekfar materialized in the center of the bridge. The reptilian alien scales gleamed under the harsh lighting of his command ship, and his yellow eyes burned with greed and arrogance. "Admiral Beek," Dekvar said, his voice carrying the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. "You and your ships will leave this system immediately. The Kitharans and their world now belong to the Zalani Empire. Admiral Beak remained calm though his crew tensed around him. I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Warlord. The Kitharans are under human protection. Vekvar's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. Protection. Admiral, you have 12 ships. We have 50. Your little rescue mission is over. These beings have abilities that could benefit the Empire. We will take them, and we will put them to proper use. You mean you want to enslave them? Admiral Beak said quietly. We prefer the term resource management, Vekvar replied with another ugly laugh. You humans always get emotional about these things. Now leave, before we are forced to remove you. Admiral Beak looked at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park Jinwoo, who nodded slightly. Everything was ready. Warlord Vekvar, Admiral Beak said with a small smile, you're absolutely right. We do have 12 ships, but we're not alone. Suddenly, the space around the human fleet began to shimmer and bend like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and then Kitharan vessels appeared, as if materializing from another dimension. The Kitharan ships looked like nothing else in the galaxy. They were sleek and organic, almost alive, with surfaces that seemed to flow and change. They moved through space in impossible ways, phasing through dimensions and appearing behind enemy lines without warning. Quanthor, now bearing the title of Quantum Admiral, appeared as a hologram next to Admiral Beak. His eyes glowed with the same blue light that all treated Kitharans possessed, and space seemed to bend slightly around his image. Warlord Dekvar, Quanthor said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the bridge equipment hum. You are not welcome in our space. Dekvar's confidence faltered for the first time. Impossible. You were dying. You were weak. We watched your cities crumble for decades. We were sleeping, Quanthor replied calmly. The humans helped us wake up. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The Zalani fleet, confident in their numerical superiority, opened fire with everything they had. Their energy beams and missiles should have overwhelmed the smaller human Kithoran force. Instead, the Kithoran ships simply vanished as the weapons passed through the space where they had been. They reappeared inside the Zalani defensive formations, phasing through shields as if they didn't exist. How are they doing that? Shouted Dekvar over his communications system as his own flagship shuddered under quantum attacks. The human ships, now equipped with Kitharan quantum drive technology, moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic. Admiral Beak watched as Commander Lee Sung-ho's destroyer appeared directly above a Zalani cruiser, firing precisely targeted shots at critical systems. Target their engines, not their life support, Admiral Beak ordered. We disable them. We don't kill them if we can help it. The battle turned quickly. Zalani ships found their own weapons turning against them as Kitharan quantum manipulation redirected energy beams back at their sources. Some Zalani vessels simply stopped working as their quantum fields were disrupted, leaving them floating helplessly in space. Within 2 hours, the mighty Zalani war fleet was in full retreat. Vekvar's final transmission was filled with rage and humiliation. This is not over, humans. The galaxy will learn what you've been hiding. Others will come. On the surface of Cathara Prime, Ambassador Wang Jihome found himself overwhelmed with communications from across the galaxy. Species that had mocked human efforts for years were now desperately trying to establish diplomatic contact. Ambassador, his aide, Kim Yoonji reported, "We've received formal requests for meetings from the Althorian Collective, the Crystalline Confederacy, and even the High Arbiter himself. They all want to discuss mutual cooperation opportunities." Elder Namara, now serving as the primary Kitharan representative, stood beside the ambassador as they watched the communications pour in. "It seems the galaxy has suddenly discovered that we exist," she said with dry humor. Captain Kim, who had remained on Kithara Prime throughout the crisis, joined them in the communications center. Funny how people want to be your friend once they realize you're not helpless. The question, Ambassador Wan said thoughtfully, is what we do now. We've shown that the Human-Kitharan Alliance is a real power in the galaxy. Other species will want to either join us or destroy us. Elder Nimura's expression grew serious. My people remember everything, Ambassador. We remember who helped us when we were dying, and we remember who wanted to watch us disappear. That memory will guide how we treat others going forward. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Sometimes the species you abandon might not stay abandoned forever. 5 years had passed since the battle with the Zilani Empire, and the Galactic Council chambers looked completely different. Where once, the Kitharans had no voice at all, Quantum Sage Velanara now sat in a seat of honor, her presence causing small ripples in the fabric of space-time around her. The other delegates had learned to give her plenty of room. Ambassador Han Soyang stood to address the assembled representatives, her words carrying the authority of the new galactic power structure. Behind her, holographic displays showed images of thriving worlds and healthy populations across dozens of star systems. Honorable counselors, she began, today we propose the Universal Uplift Accords. These new laws will change how we treat species in crisis. No longer will we abandon entire civilizations because they appear weak. No longer will we decide who deserves to live based on temporary problems. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Counselor Vextai, whose crystal form had once glowed red with mockery when humans first proposed helping the Kitharans, now leaned forward with eager interest. The Crystalline Confederacy fully supports these accords, he announced quickly. Perhaps we could discuss establishing humanitarian partnerships with the Human-Kitharan Alliance. We have resources we could contribute to such noble efforts. Other delegates rushed to voice their agreement. The same beings who had laughed at human compassion years earlier now competed to show their support for helping others. Quantum Sage Velanara's voice resonated with harmonics that touched minds directly, making everyone in the chamber feel the weight of her words. We remember those who stood by us when we faced extinction. We also remember those who would have watched us die without lifting a finger to help. Memory is a powerful thing. The message was clear, and every delegate understood it perfectly. Meanwhile, at the edge of mapped space, Captain Lee Sungman received a priority transmission on his patrol ship. He was the grandson of the original Commander Lee Ginho, who had first proposed helping the Kitharans, and he carried on his grandfather's legacy of exploration and aid. Captain, reported sensor specialist Kim Yoonji from her station, we're detecting a distress signal. It's very faint, coming from beyond the outer rim. The pattern suggests it's from an unknown species. Captain Lee studied the readings carefully. The signal was weak and desperate, cutting through the cosmic background radiation like a cry for help. What can you tell me about them? He asked. Kitharan navigator Zenthai manipulated the quantum sensors with graceful hand movements, his eyes glowing as he processed information across multiple dimensions. They are very far from here, Captain, beyond the edge of our galaxy's spiral arm. Their civilization is ending. I can sense their fear and desperation, even from this distance. Captain Lee looked around his bridge at the mixed crew of humans, Kitharans, and even reformed Zilani, who had joined the Alliance after witnessing its success. Over the past 5 years, they had helped 17 different species overcome various crises. The galaxy had learned that cooperation worked better than abandonment. How many ships do we have in this sector? He asked his communications officer. 12 human vessels and 8 Kitharan ships. Captain, the Althorians have also volunteered. 3 of their exploration vessels, if we need additional support. Captain Lee smiled. The same Althorians who had once clicked their mandibles in dismissal of human efforts were now eager to help with rescue missions. Signal the fleet. Set course for the source of that distress call. Someone out there needs our help. As the Alliance fleet began folding space and disappearing into quantum tunnels, the bridge of Captain Lee's ship filled with the familiar energy of hyperspace travel. Through the viewing windows, stars stretched into lines of light as they traveled faster than physics should have allowed. Back on Kithara Prime, now a gleaming center of technology and natural beauty, Elder Nimura walked through the quantum gardens with Dr. Park Hyjin. The elderly doctor had remained on the world she had helped save, now serving as director of galactic medical research for the Alliance. Do you think your people knew what would happen when they first decided to help us? Nimara asked, watching the sunset paint the restored sky in brilliant purples and golds. Dr. Park smiled, her hair now silver with age, but her eyes still bright, with the curiosity that had driven her research for decades. I think we just did what felt right. We saw people who needed help, and we helped them. Everything that came after was a gift. Above them, human and Kitharan children played together, in the restored gardens, their laughter echoing across dimensions. Some of the human children showed early signs of developing quantum sensitivity from growing up around Kitharans, while young Kitharans learned human concepts of determination and hope. The galaxy is different now, Dr. Park observed, watching the children play games that bent reality in small, harmless ways. Yes, Elder Nimura agreed. Fear has given way to cooperation. Abandonment has been replaced by assistance. And it all started because one species refused to walk away when others needed help. In the distance, another Alliance fleet prepared for departure, carrying medical supplies and hope to a species none of them had ever met. The cycle continued, spreading outward through the galaxy like ripples in a pond. The universe had learned an important truth. Those who lift others up often find themselves rising highest of all.